happening. I think I can create. Do I have a Minikube? Create it. Okay, it's creating one. Um, so I made the book. Can people see the book and the terminal at
Yep.
the same time
Yep.
to figure out how to go to the next thing? Cluster hardening. So this one, they're going to cover restricting access to the Kubernetes API. How do you configure RBAC, which from CK you should be very familiar with that. Um, and then using service accounts and using a service accounts, using creating a token of service account, and then updating Kubernetes with frequency. We can show some of the commands and explain what they do, how they work. But this should be from CKA, so I cannot remember. Maybe and exams change, right? When they update it, I cannot remember when I took CKS 2 years ago if they asked me about upgrading Kubernetes. Definitely, they didn't ask me about the STD backup database thing. That was in the CKA. So yeah, the guide and the book explains that Kubernetes is, and for some folks that are starting, like when I tell them this, it opens their eyes so large that they didn't realize. And I think it happened to me also at the beginning. Was really because I was using kubectl, using Kubernetes, and then when somebody told me like, "Yeah, you're just talking HTTPS, like you can use curl if you want to talk to Kubernetes," I was like, "Really? So how? What is happening under the hood?" And it's just a RESTful interface. So that's what the chapter goes over about what is happening with that Kubernetes. So in this case, if I'm created a Minikube and my kube config is pointing to here, but what they show here is you can run. And by the way, if I think they in the environment they set up autocomplete for you. So, but under you can do cluster info is one command. Why is doing the dump? I don't want to do the dump. You get the information about what is the HTTPS that you're talking to. Interesting. It prints the core DNS. Why core DNS? Core DNS is not exposed by default. Weird. Anyway, in production, but this is the HTTPS, and then that's what you talk to. And if you do something like, I don't know if they have it here, and it's on port, well, in my case is 55826 because I think this is Minikube. Typically, the default port is 6443. And if I do something like kubectl version, for example, right, I'll get that information, the server information. So one trick I usually give is if you do verbose, I think from 6 to 10, let's try 6. You will actually see the HTTP verb and request that you're doing. So it's a curl against this. I say curl because that's the tool that I use. I don't know if people are like this two thing. I'll put it up here. You can do 6, you can do 10, and that will give you more details about like the response. So if you're trying to troubleshoot also like either like if you're programmatically talking to Kubernetes or you're trying to resolve something about the connection or not connecting, or you want to look under the hood or like how the client is talking back and forth HTTP, then dash v10 will give you all the information of like even the response body, right? This is the information that I got back. So for example, and this is useful for people that are like also writing. I was helping someone that was writing a JavaScript program to talk to Kubernetes, and there's an SDK or library like an Shim, but he didn't know what are the other things that he can do, or he knew how to do it in kubectl, but he didn't know how to do it in like HTTP REST request. So this is a way to do it. So if I do curl, I guess if I do curl that, I need to pass -k, I think, right? To say I don't have a CA. For this, I'll get back this information. And any Kubernetes cluster, even if it's configured with authentication or login or EKS, AKS, GK, this endpoint have to be public. So far, from my understanding, and you will see this information there. I think that's it. Any questions? Did somebody learn something new? Or are you less afraid of working with Kubernetes now that you know it's just HTTPS back and forth?
Definitely less afraid, I guess.
Yeah. So for some people using kubectl, they start like copy pasting commands and like, but for once you get to a level, like you want to know like how is this working under the hood? At least for me, right? I'm a person like I need to know how it works. I don't like magic. I like magic, but I want to know how the magic trick works.
Thanks for sharing. Thanks for sharing. Now I'm going to poke around now. Anything with the title of the book wasn't interesting to me, but now if that's what's in here, I'm going to go poke around.
Yeah, and you can go back. We explained a few of these things when they did the CKS series with Chad's book, Acing the CKS. That's another good book. The other aspect that it talks here is get Kubernetes service. So if you go to Kubernetes, I use K for everything. So sorry if you see K. If you do get service in the Nange default namespace, right? You will get one service. And by the way, the namespace default is one namespace that you cannot delete and it's always there. So in production, just stay away of putting stuff in the default namespace. But all programs or controllers inside Kubernetes that wants to talk to the Kubernetes API from inside the cluster, it will use this service. And if you delete it, it will come back. I didn't know that. I learned that from the book. I think Ben mentioned it somewhere here. Do you guys want to give it a try? I like breaking things. So if I do service, and that's another way of learning. Like I like to learn how things works under the hood, and I also like breaking things. And let's see if it comes back. Voila, it's back. And it's not like it's back. I think the Kubernetes API server will make sure that it's always there. And this is the IP address, right, that you're going to talk to, and then that translates to the IP address of where the Kube API server is running. If you're running in a production server, like it'll be a load balancer kind of host name, like if you in a cloud provider. If you go and do kubectl, this X copies everything. That's something annoying that I found on these O'Reilly books, that when you copy something, it copies like a snippet was saying like, oh, you're copying this from this book, which copyright, which that's
I haven't tried copying code snippets. Really? Is that the thing from O'Reilly? Oh.
It's not a big deal. I mean,
yeah.
Also, Ben has the GitHub repo with the stuff. Okay, I'll go a little bit faster. You should know already about endpoints. So you do usually that's the best troubleshooting command that I suggest to people. Get EP. If this thing returns empty, you have a problem with your services and your selectors. So that other IP was the cluster IP, right, with the service. This is actually the if you have a pod, this will be like the pod's IP. This is not a pod. This is just the service.
Sorry, Carlos, question. What's the authentication mechanism with the endpoint to the API server?
We'll get to that in a second. So the short answer is the way a client connects to the server is using a client certificate. So you have to have a client certificate signed by the CA that the Kubernetes, the other side of the house, Kubernetes API server has. And I think that's the cut of this chapter. But anyway, this is service discovery. So this is how you would know how to get to the IP address of the Kube API server if you need to talk to it from inside inside Kubernetes cluster. And the only reason you actually need to do that is if you have some code or a container that is a controller, not like a normal workload app. See here, if you talk to from inside, so this is something that Ben added here. If you create a pod, which is krun, I think he's using Kubernetes -- image. Let's see if it works here. Alpine -it. This is just to show you that authentication. IT-rm -- restart equals never. Is that correct? Or I mess up something? I think --rm.
Yeah, you
I
need
think
to.
you have another K in there.
That's the name of the pod.
Oh, never mind.
Pod. I meant image IT. I mean never.
And then
and then
probably
what I want to run, right?
Yep.
Let's see if it runs. Yeah, this information it's there. You can configure it that this information doesn't go in there. Also, I hit a production problem because the amount of environment variables that you can put in a container is fixed to a certain amount. So if you have a lot of services, like every service that is on that namespace, it will show up. Let's see, think about it. Yeah. So if you have 1,000, 2,000, 10,000, you have more environment variables, and you will get to a point that you cannot execute a program passing that many environment variables. So you have like a denial of service. That's a side note. Well, actually, this is security. Yeah, you can do that. This one is the same thing that we were talking before about doing a curl. You get that information back. This one is config view raw, and then this will give you actually the certificate, so you can see everything in there. Minikube has a command. I think it's called minikube config. I mistyped minikube. So you ever switched your context, I think you can get it back with minikube. It's not miniview config. Why this thing is I need to remove it. I thought it was kubeconfig to get the context. Does somebody knows?
Isn't it config current context?
Config.
Is that what you're looking for?
Let me
I think
see.
kubectl config.
It's minikube config, I think.
Oh, that.
What is it? Config.
Config.
We just restored it. Set, right? I thought there was a command to just set it. If you lose it, get back that context. Or I'm dreaming of this. Maybe somebody I can ask making ChatGPT. So config set.
What are you trying to do? Maybe that's what.
Like if I remove my kubeconfig, how do I get it back? How do I restore it for Minikube? I thought it was kubeconfig. Maybe I'm thinking
Why
kind.
did you use kubectl config? Maybe is that what you need? Kubectl config.
No, let me.
I don't get what you.
1 second. Kube config. There you go. So how do I restore it?
Oh, that.
Right. I don't have access. Minikube, mini. Maybe I'm confusing this with Kind. I think Kind has an option to do restore. This auto completion is killing me. Maybe start.
Is this the whisper thing?
Yeah, let me kill it. There you go. If I do a start on top of a start, it should not create a new cluster, does it? Minikube, kubectl is not configured to use Minikube cluster, default namespace, add-on storage, default. Okay. And the reason I did that was because, yeah, now it works. I wanted to show this, and I didn't want to show the other 13 production clusters that I have in that file. Get it, Manny? So yeah, you can do kubeconfig raw, but this thing is not pasting. K config view dash raw, right? And that will print the information that you do in here, and then this is the CA that cluster, that when you connect to it through the IP address that we were doing, like this IP address, it will map, right? It will have 127.0.0.1 in the certificate that you get back, and that's how it works. And this is the certificate. Somebody was asking, like, you always need a client certificate, so you're not logging in with username and password or a token. You're providing a certificate that has a subject and then organization group that you belongs to, and that's how the API server is allowed to know who you are. We just move us to the next thing. Well, actually, I was explaining what is already in the book. So in the book explains what I was just explaining in here. And then this is the idea, right? That was saying before. I can say, let me move it a little bit down here, because I remember that I did the is it cube? Is it K cluster info, right? So this is our IP address, and I did the curl against it, and I was able to get that information. I can do one with the certificate and actually authenticate to it, and then get more information. So, for example, this one that is doing here is I can do a curl, right? This URL /API/v1/namespaces, right? And I can even do K to say I ignore the client validating the certificate. This is what -K does in curl, if you're not aware. And it said, like, you cannot list the namespaces, right? Because your user system anonymous. But you can like do what I was doing before, which it was just curl, is it version or just, right? That one I can do. So anyone system anonymous can do /version, but it cannot do API v1 namespaces. So as you can start thinking about security, when you're protecting the Kubernetes API, which is one of the requirements that you need to know for CKS, is how do you protect this endpoint, right? So, and this is an HTTPS. But if you want to get access, which in my kubeconfig, I'm administrator, I should be able to list the namespaces. So let's try again the one about the namespaces, but this time providing the, let me put the information here so I have what I need, right? So if I do K config, what was it, raw or --raw? K config, anyone remember what's the command? Oh, view, right? I should be able to do dash cert, and then this is my certificate, and then dash the key that was used to create this certificate, create the CSR, right? That was created, and then that, and I think that's all we need, right? So I was denied to do that. So now I pass this information. Here's my certificate to authenticate, Mr. API, and the key that I need to do on my side so I can encrypt my information that I'm sending to the API server. And this should work. And it says it doesn't. Oh, because I missed the CA. So I need the CA, like that certificate. I could do -K, right? Can I do -K and that will work? Who wants to say it will work? If I dash, that's a good question for you. If I add, I only passing the certificate client and the key, and I got an error message. If I pass -K, would that work or not?
It should, because it's self-signed,
What is self-signed?
the certificate.
No, the certificate is not self-signed. It was signed by the API. So -K means like the certificate that is coming back. I'm going like, I don't care. So votes are done. People say no. People say you need to add the CA cert. Yep. Do I need to add the CA cert or -K will work? So let's try. It worked. Why did it work? Anyone? Guesses? I see Eric there, Mr. Security expert that works in ChainGuard.
Sorry, I'm still between two calls. What's the question?
-K. What does it do? I mean, that's the not why it worked. Like I think it's people are not familiar with the -K in curl.
Oh, on curl?
Familiar?
That's ignore ignore untrusted certs, right?
Yeah. So basically, when I'm passing this command, I'm passing the -K, and I'm passing my certificate. The certificate that I'm passing to the QP API to the server side like, yep, I trust who you are. You can talk to me. When the API server is going to talk back to the client, in this case, curl is kind of like, oh, the certificate you gave me back, API server, I really don't know if you are the real API server, right? So the -K in curl is used for development. Use it only for development, please. It's to say, I know who you are. You're in my computer. You're Minikube. Go ahead. But if you're talking to the real over the internet or something, you want to have that CA, and that CA I got through some means to say, when I'm talking to this Kubernetes server or cluster, this is the CA that I'm going to validate that he's the real one, right? Or he's like the network information that I send him back. That's I can trust it. So I need the CA -C. What was CA? Oh, -CA cert, and then this path. Let's try again. Oh, instead of that, then I need my certificate saying, are you really the API server?
Fixed your double dash in front of the CA cert.
-- right?
Yep.
Yeah. There we go. It worked. Is everybody understood a little bit? I think that's the gist of also of like, how do you communicate with the API server? You need a certificate. You also need to validate that the API server that you're talking to is the one that you're thinking that you're talking to. And then you'll be able to go in, and since the certificate that I'm using here is for kube admin, I should I can trust it. And that's another question is, if I do a cat on here, this is this, right? And what is this format that is inside this begin certificate and certificate? Anyone knows? Any guesses?
Base 64.
I don't think it's base 64. But you can use OpenSSL, right? What's the command to see the text of a PEM file CRT? I think it's text. Is it rec?
I have to Google it every freaking time.
Right? It's amazing. If I had ChatGPT, I was going to ask.
It'll lie.
It will lie. What are you opening a website? Oh,
Tony's got it.
oh, let me paste it. X509. Yeah. This guy. Yeah, it's X509. It's not rec. Rec is to create the CSR, a self-sign. In is the certificate that I'm putting in, and I want it out, and I don't want to create a file, right? So look at, this is just a SSL certificate. I add the just, it's an SSL certificate. So if you know that, there's nothing special here about Kubernetes, right? And if you look at the subject, where if I can find it, right? Oh, subject is empty, so you don't have a username, but you belong to the organization. Oh yes, you have a subject. Here it is. My bad. Subject is the whole thing. I forgot. Then CN is the Kubernetes user that you identify as. So I'm Minikube user. I thought it was going to be called something admin, but I'm Minikube user, and the group that I belong to is system masters, right? So that's why I'm allowed to list namespaces when the Kubernetes, and this certificate was signed by this public key, which belongs to the API server. So the API server, that's how it knows that it can like, it's good. This certificate I can trust. But these two things are the two things that maybe you need to remember, that when you have a certificate, the user is this string. Organization unit, you can belong to multiple groups. So this could be like multiple organization units. And I mean system masters. And system masters, what permission does it have? Anyone knows, or how to find out?
Cluster role binding.
So for example, if I do get role bindings, right? That's one way.
Cluster role binding, it should be. It's cluster role.
Yeah. It's cluster wide. My bad. Yeah, you're correct. That group should show up somewhere. That's how it gets access. There's no magic, right? So one of these role bindings have system masters inside. If we want to know, how do I hide this? I don't know. That's YAML. If I want to get all of them, and then grep for what, system masters or masters, I think it was. That one, right? So I can do -B 10 12 -A 2. So I'm looking for, wow, there's almost YAML here. Let me do 20. So this role binding with the annotation, metadata
Cluster
name, cluster admin. So the cluster admin, cluster role binding, the subject that have access to it is system master. So that's the group. So that's why when are you talking and trying to connect to it and it's the namespaces, I'm coming as group system master, and the role that I have is cluster admin on this cluster role binding. Everyone follow that? I know I'm not going the same way as the book, but trying to explain things as like we hit them, right? And peeling the onion kind of thing. Is that useful? Just feedback for like how I'm showing things. I like to, this is just my style of learning. Like I like to learn like why did that work, and why did that work, and why did, like, asking right behind the scenes, what's behind the scenes, why is that happening? And there's no magic. So if you took the CKA, you should know all these like lingo terms that I already mentioned, like how to create a cluster, RBAC, and all those things. So that's it. Yeah, it says restricting access to the API server. I think this section talks about, I think the things that I mentioned, like, I think I just summarized what is in the guide. Using a client certificate to talk to that API server over the internet, and then how you're restricting users by is because you're identifying yourself as a certificate. But if we want to add a user, I think that's the last thing that we can try. If I want to create a user, I can create it like this with a certificate. And I think this is something that you should know for the exam. I know these commands. So if you cannot remember these commands, what can you do in the exam? Question. Like the commands are like, you have to create a key, and then you have to create, with that key, you have to create a CSR, which is a certificate sign request using OpenSSL Rec. The first one is OpenSSL RSA. And then what we need to do is base64 the CSR, and then create a YAML file that has a certificate sign request, and then it has a spec request that base64 goes in here. The signer name is this, and usages is client auth. And then you do a kubectl apply YAML that, and then you get this, and then approve it, and then get it back. So anyone knows, if you cannot remember this sequence, what could you do during the exam? Anyone? What are your resources that you can use during the exam?
I think Chun Pong has it in the comments.
Oh, use the docs. Okay, good.
What I would do.
That's what I'm going to do, because I have one brain, and ChatGPT cannot be used. So sorry. So I can use the Kubernetes docs, right? Kubernetes docs, and only that web. I think they have like a firewall or something that only allows, or proxy that only allows to go to this site in the new environment. So you don't have to worry about making a mistake on searching something. So what do I search for? Like that's the thing that I hit this week. I couldn't find those steps with my search ninja. What is the term that I need to type in here?
Certificate?
Certificate. And you're running out of time during the exam. Is that the one?
The first one should be. No, sign.
Nope, that's not the one. That doesn't have the steps. Somebody else. So chat put the whole thing in there, but I'm the exam, and I don't remember URLs that long, chat. Sorry.
Authentication?
Authentication. Yep, that's right. Yes, authentication, or if you want to be more specific, authenticating. Just remember that. So yeah, this is the page, and basically we can do it. So let's copy paste. That was useful, because for me I couldn't, like, I typed different commands and I couldn't find it. But authenticating is one that hit it, and that's under references, API access control, and authenticating. So if I type this here, I'm creating a new user with the subject name. Remember, I talked about the subject name, CN, which is when you're creating like a SSL certificate for a website, right? It will be your domain name, like carlos.com, santana.dev. That'll be the CN. and then you have your organization units, which is like the groups that you belong to. So this is a good example of like showing this. So this is the same commands are in the book. So I created those files. I created the oh, this thing created the whole thing. Give me a second. Oh, okay. So this command, instead of doing in the book, it creates the key first with generate a key and then do a rec to create the CSR. This command is a little bit different. That does a rec, and it has the you have to get the keys. Oh no, it's the same thing. I think I forgot. I need to create the key, right? Or not? It'll be self-signed. It's a new key. Let me see. New key out. Yeah, okay. So I think the key got created. Or not. Oh, I don't have the key. Duh. That was the error message. People are not reading. So I need to create the key. I need this key. And the key is with OpenSSL gen OpenSSL gen RSA. And you can put the size of the key if you want out. And I need the key, which is this guy, right? And the size doesn't have, I think the size could be anything. So if I run it again, now I have my key and my CSR. They don't have that in the instructions?
So there is a problem with the docs.
What is the problem with the docs?
The file is missing how to create it. The .pom that is used in that command.
Okay. I think this is good. If somebody can open a...
I tried it locally and it asked for that file.
Yeah, it's because you need the key. It's not, it didn't tell you the key. So I think it'd be a good opportunity if somebody wants to do a contribution to Kubernetes. You can open an issue, GitHub, and then if you want, open a PR and add the instructions to add the key.
I think there's a link right below the instructions. It says managing certificates.
Managing certificates somewhere here.
You
This one?
here. Yeah.
Oh, this one?
To generate the client cert.
Ah, I see. I see. So yeah, they have it here. And they also explain this one. I don't think this one, don't remember the exam that give you access to this, but you're not going to be dealing with this. But yeah, creating a key is here. And then creating a CSR, or this is creating a certificate, signing a certificate with this. But yeah, that's the CSR. I don't know if I have time to, let me see what else. Then you have this, which if we want to do it, I think it will copy the whole thing. Let me see if I can copy this. See code csr.yaml, and this is the YAML that we need. And I think this information, I think I should have taken it from here, right? In the book, that's from the book from here. I thought they had it here. I don't think this is the steps. I thought there was one document that explains it had everything. Or maybe it's this one. Anyway, we'll continue doing it. So this is the usages, expiration, That's not really required. This one is required because that's the type of designer that you want. And this is the base64.
I've sent a better one, Carlos, which contains the OpenSSL command with the file.
Which one? You put it in the chat?
Yes, it's in the chat.
Let me see. This one has the commands. Cluster role, signers, Kubernetes signers. So yeah, this link, approval rejection. This is just reading the
if you look for OpenSSL, like Control F.
Oh, these two things. I see. So this is the page that we want to hit, not authenticating, right?
So it was my first one.
Yeah. So I think put it in this chat correctly. So certificate and certificate request, and then search for the OpenSSL commands. Good one. So these are the instructions I remember when I first did this for the first time doing. Let's try it. See if we have a few minutes. Want to try it.
I remember this one because there is the TR command, which in the exam you needed.
The which R command?
TR to trim.
Oh, the TR minus R
yes,
slash
it's
N.
little bit down. Yes, that one.
Yeah. So we put this one, copy pasted everything. I don't think we need this, right? Because this is what I need.
Taken from CSR, exactly.
Yeah. So I think what they do is this, and then maybe in the exam, what you need to do is something like this. But you need to create this. Yeah, I know what I mean. You have to get the base64.csr file, right? That you created.
Yes, from that
my user CSR, right? And that command is here. You said this command, and then this is the base64 that you put in here in request.
Yes.
And once you do that, now you can run this guy, right? Hey, and then you can do get CSR. Yep. And then see it's pending, but somebody needs to approve it.
You can approve it.
And then you can do kubectl certificate approve. So you can do k-cert, and then you have a completion, right? And then you can approve or deny AP, approve, and then which certificate, right? This one doesn't have auto completion. So you can do if I can type my user. If you request it again, see it's approved. And then if you do -o YAML, then the certificate that you got back is this guy, right? And then this is the certificate that you can use now to authenticate to, like for example, this thing, right? You're doing a base64 out of this. That's all information that you want back. So I have my user.crt. This is the certificate.
That's what if you want to add it to kubeconfig.
Yeah.
If you want to create a role and bind it.
And then this is the command that you will need to do, right? You're doing the client key that you created, the certificate that you got back. You just want to embed it, and you say true. And if you do a cat on /.kubeconfig, right, your information will be down here for my user. Usually you have a section for users, and then you have a section, for users. And if you want to switch right? You can do this, and then the effective user becomes that user. So I'm now my user. Did they did groups
It's
in
not
this
able to do
case?
anything, I think.
Yeah, I didn't pass group, but in the exam, if you're being asked to create groups, then you can do /o, right, and add them. But then this user cannot do much, right? If I do k gets namespaces, oh yeah, I need to switch to my user. I still have the other context, and to do that, you can set it. You can create a context like this, and I think to change the context that I'm doing instead of specifying is that if I get namespaces, you can't, right? Because you're using that certificate. So as that user, my user, you cannot do get pods, nothing. So in that case, I think that's what the next thing in the book was saying, like, how do I create a role and a role binding to give access to this user? So as I think we can use the example from the exam, from the book. So K creates role developer -- verb. He can create, if I can type this correctly, -- verb. He can get. He can -- verb. He can list -- I think you can pass all of them with
In
parentheses,
comma
commas,
separated,
right?
Comma separated.
I should just continue because, and then you can do that on resources like pods. Oh, and the problem is because the user I'm using, right, was my user, so I need to go back to Minikube user, right? I thought it was Minikube user. I mistyped it. Use context. Kconfig view. Where's the other one? What's the name of that other context?
Minikube.
Minikube is the context. The user is Minikube user, right? So it's Minikube the context. So now I can be an admin and create a role, and I should be able to create a role binding. So create a role binding. Call it developer binding. What else? What I call it? -- role equals. Let's see if autocomplete works. Now developer, and then -- user. What's the name of my user? My user, right? And now if I switch back to my user that I created with, where was it? My user, right? And now I should be able to, what I was allowed to do? Get list the pods. So I can do get pods. And
I
it didn't
think
work.
because the context you created, you have used a wrong cluster name. If you go back to the history of...
Oh, I didn't use Minikube. I used
yes,
something
you
else.
used the name cluster or something.
Let's see. On this context, right?
Yes.
Kubernetes. So I'm not using the right context. So let's create another one. Good eye. So the cluster is Minikube, I think, right?
Yes.
Minikube. Would this overwrite?
Yes.
Right? Username. It's asking for username. Interesting.
Because my user at the end R, Mrs. R.
I don't know how to type. Yep. I can on any namespace. Can I do it on any namespace?
It will give you access denied if you do it in any dash. For example, a cube system. If you try it, it will be access denied.
Because I created a role binding
In a default namespace.
in a
If you
default
do-
namespace.
If you don't
Yeah. So yeah, for people
specify-
to know what it is they're talking about, if you, because I didn't specify a namespace, I can only do it on the namespace, right? Get pods dash and cube system, right? It will not work. But if I do it in default, hey, 1 second, somebody's pinging me.
I think there is a command called cube config kubectl cani.
Yep. He goes over that in a second. So I was going to try something else. But the thing is, one thing that you can do is you can create a role, and then that role doesn't have to be a cluster role to create a cluster role binding. So I can go back, right, and create a cluster role binding, and that should give me access to any namespace, right? I should be able to create a cluster role binding. Let me see if that's correct.
You cannot create a cluster role binding with a role. If you want cluster role binding, it should be a cluster role. Because role.
Yes, it's the other way. You can create a role binding with a cluster role.
Yes.
Yeah, that's correct. That's correct. Anyway,
you can create cluster role binding with the cluster role admin, which is already existing.
Yeah, let's show the auth, the command. I think it's here in the. All the commands are here. We were just like trying. Where's the can I? Yeah, I think what you're referring to is the command can I or auth. It's auth. Yeah, auth, and then there's a command called can I -I. I was referring to, and this will give you what things can you do, right? Can I create pods in all namespaces? So for example, right, it will say no. Can I create pods in, can I put dash namespace default? It says yes. So this is could be a way that the scripts that check the exam, right, check if you created the cluster role bindings correctly. And that's RBAC, right? Once you have a user or a group, then you can start creating bindings, cluster role or role bindings to it. Let me see. I think we'll stop here because I think we ran a little bit of time. Any questions, feedback? I think people start dropping off. Just a few of us still on. What is next week? We'll check. Oh, I think I closed the page to the this one. Next one is hardening, and that's Chad. I can sync with Chad to see if we want to move the date to cover or we cover this at the beginning. We'll see. Okay. I think we'll stop here. The people like the session. I think we went back and forth on a lot of things, but this is what you need to do. Like if you haven't attempted a CK or CKD or CKS exam, that's what basically it is, like going down and try things and it doesn't work, and why it doesn't work. Either it could be a typo that you did, or trying to understand behind the scenes what's going on. See the feedback from the chat. Okay, we'll stop here. And if we don't cover we start in the next chapter, the rest of the book. Hopefully people have it. Was around, yeah, we covered these cluster role bindings. You can create it with one trick I wanted to show. Like when you want to create a role, and you need to modify the YAML, like use this to generate, not create it, but if you want to see the YAML, right, you can do -o YAML, dry run, and then you will get enough YAML to do things like this if you want to configure it with edit the YAML before you apply it. I think we covered this. What permissions you get, you don't get. Service account name and auto mount is what's the next thing. That was use and how to create a secret. So the key to create a secret for a service account is put the type. So when you create the secret, then is for this service account name, the annotation and the type. And that way you will have a token inside that secret that then you can use to authenticate. Here's the token and the CA if you want, like, but the token and then use the CA to talk to it. Other than that, the other stuff is like version schemes for the updates, and then the upgrade process, which Ben put a Vagrant example in the repo. This is what I was showing before. It configures a control plane Vagrant and then a node with Vagrant, and then asks you to upgrade one from 125 to 126, I believe. He has it here. I don't know if he mentioned it from, yeah, the last exercise here is to go to that repo and then try to upgrade with that Vagrant setup 125, 126. And basically you would use the upgrade kube ADM, do a plan, apply the plan, do a update the kubelet, and then restart the kubelet. I think that's it. Maybe we take that next week. I'll sync with chat to see if we move the dates and we go over this. Took more time than expected. Okay, we'll see you folks. Have a good weekend.
Thank you.
Stop the recording.